To introduce our State Representative Jesse White. Jesse has been a staunch supporter of our September 11th Memorial Service and many events throughout our village of Eldersville. Jesse has fought diligently for the people and has gained my deepest respect and admiration. His commitment to help make a difference is very real. Jesse has and continues to give his best in his service to and for the people.
Thank you, Diane. And Diane, on behalf of everybody here, thank you so much for everything that you do. This has truly become a labor of love for you, and I don't think anybody here doesn't recognize all the hard work and effort you put into it. I think she actually deserves a round of applause. You know, I was listening to some of the numbers that were read off before about the number of victims, and it kind of struck me as odd because I never really thought of it in terms of numbers. And even when I was standing here looking at the honor roll, at all the numbers of people that had perished in the different wars, it kind of struck me as odd because when I think about 9/11 and I think about the impact that it had, there weren't just 3,000 victims. We were all victims. We were all attacked. It wasn't a matter of they targeted the people in those buildings or on those planes. They weren't targeting individuals. They were targeting a society. They were targeting America, which is all of us. And one of the things I've tried to think about over the past few years is why? Why did they target us? What were they trying to do? And I've been here this is the third time I've come and spoken, and I've spoken from different points of view, and it struck me that the one point of view I never really spoke about was the government point of view. And being an elected official, that seems like the one that I would probably have the greatest understanding about. So that's the way I'm gonna speak today. It strikes me as kind of interesting that we really were the victims. Because what that means is they weren't targeting individuals, they were targeting a way of life, they were targeting our way of life. And one of the problems I hear all the time in my travels throughout the area and in Harrisburg and all over the Commonwealth is there's this sentiment out there, this feeling that there's something wrong, that there's something wrong with our government, that we need radical change in our government. And what I've boiled it down to, and I guess it's not the most elegant way of putting it, but it's true, is we're in an era right now where it's kind of cool to hate government. It's just the truth. But if you think back and you really look at it, we're fundamentally not that different from the very ideals that were put forth 234 years ago. 200 and some miles from here, a bunch of people got together in a little room, sat down on a piece of parchment and wrote out some words, and declared independence, and created an idea, created an experiment, probably one of the most radical social experiments in all of human civilization. They said that we hold certain truths to be self-evident about freedom and liberty, and we created and defined that day an American way of life. And nearly 250 years later, we're still living that way of life. And sure, it may not be exactly the way it was intended back in 1776, but that's the way this works. It was designed to be an evolving, changing experiment in human democracy. So that's what they attacked that day. They attacked the way of life. They attacked an idea. And that's why we were all the victims. So what does that mean for us? What does that mean in terms of government and how we're supposed to respond? Unfortunately, when you compare the people that attacked us in their government, if you want to call it that, and the way they rule, the way they deal with their citizens, they do it through fear, they do it through intimidation. There is no room for self-expression, for free will, for freedom of speech, freedom of religion, or any of the freedoms that we, at this point, may have taken for granted. They look at what we have, and it threatens them, and they want to tear it down, plain and simple. So our job in government is to not reduce ourselves to those tactics, not reduce ourselves to that way of thinking. And let me tell you something, in politics, in government, fear is powerful. The politics of fear, the politics of tearing the other side down, that's easy. It's easy to do, which is why it gets done so often. You turn on cable news, both sides of the aisle, all ideologies, attack. That's easy. But what's hard is governing. And in order to really govern effectively, and to stand up to what they're trying to do, you have to get above the fear, be above the negativity, and you have to be positive. You have to be optimistic. Because at the end of the day, to be successful in government, you have to be about wanting to do something. You have to be willing to say yes to something. You have to be for something. And it's tough in an environment where it's a lot easier to say no. And everything can be spun, and everything can be twisted. And every action you take gets put under a microscope that can be used against you down the line. Sometimes you have to rise above that and say, forget it. I'm here because I want to do something, and I'm going to do it, and I don't care what the consequences are because I think it's the right thing to do for the people I represent. And that is a very hard thing to do, and unfortunately, it's an attitude that has really gone away in our society. I sit in the hall of the House of Representatives in Harrisburg, and I hear the things that are said, and I watch people get up and make these blabbering speeches on PCN because they know people are going to listen to them, and they sound great, but they're saying nothing. They're doing nothing. And that's the mindset we need to change. We need to be about doing something. We need to be about saying yes. We need to be about being positive. So what does that mean exactly in terms of what we can do every day? Got touched on before. One of the easiest things we can do is make sure that we are prepared for anything. That we don't let complacency or an easy decision get in the way of being prepared to defend what we need to do. Perfect example, our fire departments. What happened in Shanksville, what happened in New York, what happened in Washington, D.C., could have happened anywhere. It could have happened anywhere. So what can I do as a member of the government? I can make sure that that fire department over there has the equipment, the training, and the resources that they need to be able to respond. We can make sure our police departments have the resources they need to respond. That our community groups and our churches and all the people that work so hard to keep our community a community, instead of just a bunch of people living in houses in different places, we can make them prepared and we can keep them together, and government can be the glue that holds those things together if, God forbid, they're ever called on one day to meet the kind of challenge that we faced 9 years ago today. Those are the things we can do. And it's not always easy and it's not always popular, but that's what we need to do. That's what we're charged to do. Because by doing that, and doing those things, and sometimes doing what is hard, and doing what may not be popular, or what may not sound great on cable news, that's the way that we defend the idea that was put down on parchment 234 years ago. That's how we define the self-evident truths. They may be self-evident now, but back then no one had ever thought to write that down before. No one had ever thought to make that statement about democracy before. And if we don't stand up and defend it aggressively in every way possible, then that's how we lose the battle. And that's how we lose who we are. And anybody that's not willing to stand up and make those sort of choices, they need to get out of government right now because they're in the wrong business. This is a time for tough decisions. It's a time for hard decisions. It's a time to stand up and say what you're for and to be positive and optimistic about the future. Because as much as it may be cool to hate government, this idea of government, is the thing that they've tried to take from us, and it's the thing we can't ever let them take from us. So today we remember the people that died, and we remember the people that live. God bless all of them, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you.